All right, welcome guys. You ready for this?
Yeah, I hope so.
We'll see what happens, all right? So the core of today's lesson is to really understand how all the basic ingredients interact with each other. We're going to sort of do an interactive prezi here, as well as we have to sort of get going, because that half an hour I want to prove to you that fermentation can happen fast and aggressive if we can do a little study on all of this. Okay, so what we're going to do is, before I explain anything, we're just going to combine ingredients, pop them into a bottle, cap it with a balloon, and see what happens in 30 minutes. Fair enough?
Okay.
Can I use yours as a sample here real quick? And you guys can sort of follow in this so we can sort of accelerate this a little bit. It's all pre-scaled, and what we're going to do is, all of these are control factors that are labeled on the bottle. And you should have all of your ingredients right in front of you. So what I'd like you to do is just don't shuffle them up. You're going to need to get your water real quick.
Okay.
Put your water into the container first. Everyone has a little bit of a different component. So water goes into the bowl first, guys. Yeah? Everyone should have water. Yeah? Next thing we're going to add is, if you have it, salt and yeast. If you don't have salt, don't put the salt in, obviously. So we only have the yeast. What you can do is you can stir that up real quick. So the salt and yeast you can dump right in there, and then just stir it up real quick. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to add our flour on top of this, and you're going to stir it and make sure it's a nice homogeneous consistency. You don't have the flour, so we'll understand later on what's going on. So all you got is water and a little bit of yeast. And make sure it's really homogeneous, really working hard. You should get it, do it almost like a pancake-like batter consistency. And the only thing that I want you to do afterwards is take a temperature reading of your component and just document that somewhere. I'm not sure where that's going to happen. And then the next thing we're going to do is, once you have a paste, you guys have water, so it's going to be a little bit more tricky. You're going to pour it into a piping bag that doesn't have a hole cut into it. That's the trick. Perfect, thank you so much. You get this stuff in here, close off that piping bag, cut a hole into it. Don't make it too big, it's got to fit into the bottle. Yeah, like so. Squeak it on in there. Perfect. And then just, oh yeah, sorry. And then you can put the rubber into it. Nice. And then just set it into the center of the table. And then what I'd like you to do is just stack these into each other real quick, and do me a favor, you have to wash the dishes, just set them into the sink, please. Yeah? And the disposable piping bags you can obviously get rid of. So 55 degrees. Yeah?
Yes.
Excellent. I'll give you a hand real quick so it's
Great.
easier to pour. So as we're doing this, can anyone tell me what the 4 basic ingredients of bread baking are?
Yeast,
Yeast,
water,
water, salt,
bread, flour.
flour, and salt. Yes. Bread is hopefully what we end up with, right?
Flour.
Absolutely. Alright, so we got this under control. We need some coffee, please. Nice. Thank you very much.
With the vegetable syrup.
Yeah, just dump them right here. Perfect. Alright. That was exciting. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're just going to let this sort of happen over the next 25 minutes or so, and see if we can captivate and hopefully analyze what the reactions are that we've sort of set up. Yeah? Now let me just explain to you the folders real quick, how this is sort of envisioned. You got a title page, obviously, with the key in-depth statement on there. And you're going to need to use this throughout your entire 3 lessons. Yeah? There's a PowerPoint that you can sort of revisit if you want to. And the page that we want to get to is this one right here. Yeah. So each of this is going to be what we cover in lecture. So we each going to cover the 4 basic ingredients. Again, flour. We always start with flour first because that's the main body of bread. It's the 100% factor. We sort of get into that a little bit later on, probably next week. We're going to address that. We're always going to have water or a liquid of some type, and that is called hydration. We're going to have salt and yeast. Now here what we've done is we just wanted to see what happens if we eliminate the salt. Does something happen that's more aggressive potentially? What happens if there is no flour present? So that we can understand what the purpose of flour is besides just binding your components together. So what I'd like you to do on these pages actually as I go through the lessons and as you sort of make discoveries, trying to enter that data in these sections here because that will be eventually evaluated in the rubric that you can read over in your own time at home, and I'll go over it if you have some more time next class. Yeah. Easy enough? Should we try it?
Yeah.
All right, so what we got here is we got a slide, and what we're looking for is wheat, and it's one of these things we take for granted. We go to the supermarket, we go to your purveyor, we buy wheat. Yeah? Well, we don't just buy wheat, we actually buy the flour. And there are different kinds of flours, but as a baker, we look for certain characteristics and traits in the flour categories. So what we consider flour as being the body of bread. Bran is the outer layer, which is drawn pretty nicely into there. It's what protects it from humidity, protects it from sunlight, and it can actually survive for hundreds of years if it's protected and not exposed to moisture and heat. Moisture meaning you plant it in the ground, you give it some warmth, and they'll sprout into a new generation. The endosperm, which is the whiter portion outside, is basically where all the flour is collected from. And your germ is the little cell structure that's on the lower half of the wheat berry. Have you guys ever seen wheat berries?
No.
They sort of look like rice if you're looking at it. So what we're going to do is we're going to play Miller today, yeah? So you understand how we actually break this stuff down and end up with flour. So this looks like brown rice. It's a little shorter grain than what we sort of understand. Smell-wise, you can take one out. It's scaled by weight, so it's 400 grams. So take one. And you can sort of chew it. I remember as a kid when I was little, instead of gum, they gave us these wheat berries that we chewed and just sort of through chewing turned it into a gum-like substance because you remove the bran, and then once you got to the white portion, the endosperm, you actually had this gelatinous kind of a chewing gum. It was pretty cheap, but it was exciting. So what you have to do in a milling application, you have to remove that outer bran portion or crush it to a point where it's refined enough so that you can actually have the warm molecules bind it. You put it in like this, it would just be like soaking rice. But we got to break it down into a finer powder substance. So have you ever seen a mill work?
No.
Do you know what kind of different mills are there? Do you know? There are two.
Windmills?
Well, there are windmills and water mills, and then there's electrical mills, but there's different milling styles. Absolutely, there's a stone mill, which is 2 horizontal discs, which is what this is. This is just a small version of it. The way this thing looks like this, and it's basically got the stone embedded in plastic, and the stone grinds the wheat into a powdery substance. So this is the more antiquated way of milling. It's the more non-economically feasible way of milling. But it works, it does a nice job, and you can sort of see how you can do it. For a small-scale operation, this works just fine. And then there's roller milling, which is more the way that they would do it in industry, where you have 2 horizontal rollers that crush the grain, and it's just more industry sensitive. What I'll do is I'll post a couple of videos on that blog site, so if you want to see how milling looks like in an industrial setting, so you can sort of view it. We just won't have the time, obviously, this class. What I want to show to you is how you turn this into a refined flour. Yeah? So the way this thing goes is basically, do you want to be the miller today? Here's the button on this thing. Or you can turn it on once, I just want to sort of make sure that it's all good. So what happens is when you feed the berries at first, you have to set the grain size to as fine as possible. So you can feel this, you can touch it. It's slightly warm and almost feels like rice flour because you'll never get the fineness that you can in the commercial side. But this is done how it is done in industry, where they crack grain, they So we call this 100% extraction. We've taken the wheat bear, we've crushed it down into a situation where now we have what? What would you call that? Whole wheat. I mean, it is flour, it's a type of flour, but we're looking for a whole wheat, wholesome flour that has no nutrients removed. What I'm going to do now as one of our millers here is going to remove the bran particulates here and create a lower.